Welcome to Crunchy Stewardship. I'm Chrissy Rombach.
And I'm Katie Fiola-Jones. We're cousins on a mission to honor God by stewarding our health spiritually, mentally, and physically.
From ancestral nutrition and natural remedies to biblical finance and holistic health, we are digging deep into how God intended us to live.
So grab yourself a raw milk latte and join us as we unpack the ins and outs of Crunchy Stewardship. Hey, Crunchy friend, you are here again with Katie and Chrissy for another episode of Crunchy Stewardship. Actually, as we're recording this, Chrissy, I meant to mention that a couple episodes ago, we actually hit our 50th episode. This one today is actually 52, but I felt like 50 was a big milestone, and
we can celebrate today.
Yeah, I was like, I realized it as I was editing the episode afterwards, and I was like, wow, that was a really big deal. That's pretty cool. And
Katie,
then I meant to mention it.
Happy 50th episode anniversary.
Yay. Yeah, it is. That's so exciting. And we've been going for over a year now. We started April in 2025, and here we are a year and 1 month later, basically, because it was on the 25th that we released our first episode. So
that's
I
2
don't know.
months later.
Yeah, 2 months. Gosh, I can't do math right now. That was kind of silly of me. Yep, 2 months later. It's kind of cool just thinking that we have been going for as long as we have and still have plenty to talk about. There's just always so many things. And even after we finish recording, Chrissy and I go down these crazy rabbit holes. And even yesterday, we were just talking about crazy conspiracy theories and all of the fun stuff that you tend to get into in the crunchy world after you start learning things. And then you start asking the question, like, why? Why does it happen this way? Why are there so many toxins in the world? Why?
It's a very dangerous question to be asking. And it just leads to more rabbit holes. And sometimes it feels like it's almost safer to not ask why. But the more you ask why, the more you learn and the more interesting things get.
Yes. Actually, it's so funny. So you and I were talking about conspiracy theories yesterday. And then my good friend out here in Michigan, we went on a walk today and we just happened to go down literally the same conversation you and I had. And I was not even the one who prompted it, but we went down the same rabbit holes of just different conspiracy theories. And she was like, sometimes I don't even know why I ask why, because it's like, even if I get the information, there's not much I can do about that, because a lot of times it comes down to it's the way the system is. People are trying to make a lot of money off of the way the system is, and people want to stay in power. And you feel almost useless after you learn some of these things. Anyway, that is not what we're talking about today, but it does kind of point us to today's topic, that it's something that we ask a lot of why about. And we're talking about toxins that are in our world, such as heavy metals, seed oils, added sugars, pesticides, what was I thinking about in foods? Preservatives, all these things that are in our environment, whether it's in the air we breathe, the water that we drink, or the food we eat. It's everywhere. And we ask that question, why? Well, sometimes we don't really understand why, but we can ask the question, what do we do about it? And today we want to address the topic of detoxing and what it looks like to start to break down the main toxins that we face daily, and do that in kind of a free or even a budget-friendly way in order to support our body's natural detox pathways. We'll also talk about some specific protocols for deeper detoxing and cleansing. But overall, our hope is that we can take this information that we have, and instead of just being like, why is the world like this? It's like, okay, let's do something about this, because Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6 that our body is a temple. And so we do want to treat it like that. And so if there's toxins in it, whether it's a spiritual toxin even, because I mean, we could even touch on that could be a whole nother topic, but spiritual toxins or physical toxins, we want to get those out and honor and steward our physical bodies the way God has intended us to do that. by removing these burdens. So ultimately, we can thrive and glorify Him and continue to do that well. So we're going to be talking about all the detox things. But before we jump into detoxing, Chrissy is bringing us our random revelation of the day. So Chrissy, kick it off with your random revelation.
Yeah, so we can thank one of my patients, actually, for this random revelation. I can't say her name because HIPAA, but it's kind of funny when I'm doing her wound care, she and I often talk Crunchy, and we kind of go down the Crunchy rabbit hole for the 20 minutes or so while I'm doing her wound care. And this week, she was telling me about how she was very irritated that her Wi-Fi router is in her bedroom and the electrical box is right outside her bedroom window at like the same time. And so she literally sleeps like in between these two things. And she said she's trying to get the Wi-Fi router moved to the living room, but that's really hard to do because it kind of requires rewiring the house pretty much. And so she mentioned that she has a Shungite stone next to the Wi-Fi router. And I was like, what? She actually called it an opal stone, but then found it on Amazon later and sent it to me. It's actually a Shungite stone. And she said, yeah, it actually absorbs EMFs. And so she has an EMF tester in her house. And she sent me a picture of the EMF tester next to the Wi-Fi router without the stone. And it was like in the red, beeping, kind of going crazy. And then she put the stone down next to it. And the EMF router immediately switched and said that the EMFs were in a safe zone. And I'm talking like sitting on the same table right next to the Wi-Fi router. Yes.
Why have I never heard of this? This is crazy.
I don't know. I've never heard of it either. And, like Googling it a little bit, maybe we haven't heard of it because maybe some of it is a little woo-woo because it does kind of go into like chakra and like spirituality on like a not Christian level-ish. So I'd love to look a little bit more into that and like to know if there is any sort of spiritual connection to it or if it really is just a stone that absorbs EMFs. Because if it's just a stone that absorbs EMFs, you bet you I am buying one tomorrow. And they're on Amazon.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's so many EMF blockers and like on my to-do list is still to get like a Wi-Fi kill switch so that at the end of the day, our Wi-Fi just turns off and then all of the different devices in our house that use Wi-Fi, they all shut off because even if you turn your Wi-Fi router off, anything that's connected like Bluetooth or connected to the Wi-Fi itself or works over Wi-Fi, those are continuously pinging to look for a signal. And so even if the Wi-Fi is off, you have to turn everything else off that's connected to it. So anyway, we've been wanting to do that with our router. Thankfully, when they put it in, the wiring was all in like the furthest room from all of our bedrooms in the basement. And so we were like, I was so thankful for that because it's very far away and I didn't have to do something super, super quickly, but still want to do that. But yeah, I mean, I hear all these people on podcasts talking about Faraday boxes for Wi-Fi routers and Wi-Fi kill switches and the phone case things and stuff that you can do that you can help block all of the radiation. I have literally even heard of like the lead, or I don't know if it's lead paint, but it's a special type of paint that.
Hopefully it's not lead paint.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I don't know if it's lead paint, but special type of paint that is so expensive. I looked into it because I was like, that's kind of interesting. But you can paint on your walls and it helps keep radiation from going through it. So then if you want to protect your bedroom, you can paint it around the walls. And I know people who do that for like their nursery and stuff and paint it around the nursery walls, and just knowing that Wi-Fi in there is not really going to work very well because it's meant to block the radiation pathways and stuff. But I've never heard of these. What was it called? What was the rock?
Shungite. Shungite.
I would be so curious to look into that. Was it
Yes.
expensive on Amazon?
Oh, I don't know. She sent me a screenshot that doesn't have the price. Let me look.
Yeah, because I'm like, I wonder what it compares to any of these other things that you could be using in order to
Oh,
help.
no, it's quite inexpensive. We're talking like anywhere from $10 to maybe 40.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah,
And
I'm going to look
there's
into
only
this
like
now.
one $40 option.
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, when you talk about the woo-woo stuff, my friend and I were actually kind of talking about this today too, that we were talking about actually, so you and I were talking about some of those conspiracy theories about the bells last night. So we
Oh,
actually
yeah.
went into that and she went from a different route. And I was like, wait, this conspiracy theory that I was
Wait,
hearing
we
about
have to talk.
bells.
We have to mention the bells. Like, what's the backstory of the bells? You can't just say the bell.
I mean,
A
the
lot of different
bell
kinds.
conspiracy theory. People are like, what the heck?
What bells?
It has to do with frequencies, basically, and that certain frequencies are actually really beneficial for harmonizing the cells and the energy inside your body, which when you start saying that, it sounds so woo-woo. But there's so much scientific research of like how, I mean, we all know that our bodies are made of atoms and like the cells and they're all vibrating, right?
Well,
So
it
it's
makes
like,
sense. I mean, think about
makes
how you
sense.
feel when you're listening to like heavy metal music versus when you're thinking to like classical music. Like it brings about a very different feeling in your body, and maybe not
Yes.
like an emotional feeling, but like a tension or a tension reduction
Did
kind
I
of.
tell you about that study that the guy on that podcast mentioned
No.
about heavy metal? Okay, so there's another book. I should look it up. There's a book that he referenced. I looked it up, but it didn't actually, the book itself does not seem like it's that interesting, but there was an interesting piece of information in there. It's a lady who did this study on like classic like playing music to plants and the effect that it had
Oh, I think
on the
I've seen
plants.
something like that.
Yes. And so when you play certain music at that has a certain frequency or what is it, like the hertz or something? I don't even know what the technical phrasing is.
Beats me.
Anyway, if you when you play like classical music or all these like softer, more honestly, more beautiful sounding music, the plants would thrive and they were really fruitful and all this stuff. They would flower and they did really, really well. When you played heavy metal music, they usually were stunted. Some of them wouldn't grow at all and they would die, but they were just really heavily impacted. However, the one plant that apparently did thrive under heavy metal music, do you have any guesses what it is?
Um,
It might
my first thought was
coincide.
a dandelion.
No, it's marijuana.
Maybe-
And I was like, oh, how appropriate, I guess. But
That's funny.
anyway, so, okay, the Bell's theory, we're going down such a weird tangent that I didn't expect to do, but I have to explain it now so that people aren't like, what the heck? What is the Bell theory? The Bell's conspiracy theory is that they meaning, the government, whoever's quote unquote in control of everything, basically, the people in power. You think about like the enemies of the whole world kind of a thing. And honestly, I feel like there is a very spiritual element to a lot of it, of, the Antichrist and stuff, but that's a whole nother whole nother topic altogether. But they, quote unquote, they realized that these bells, these ginormous tons of pounds of bells that you see in like old historical photos, they were all taken down and used for what they said was, using it in ammo, like melting it and turning it into ammunition in order to like have more ammunition for the war. And it sounds like all good and virtuous and stuff. But then you start going down these rabbit holes to find out, well, oh, these bells had a lot of benefits to them, including things like benefiting the plants in the area, so crops and stuff, and harmonizing the energies and the cells and everything in your body, and people would stay healthier and stay happier, and it would ward off like kind of like demonic spirits and stuff because they didn't like the frequencies of these beautiful sounding bells. And so there's like a lot of crazy interesting benefits and stuff, and then all of a sudden all these bells were all taken down because they needed them for war materials, but really it's like, oh, did they take these down because they actually were keeping people healthy and happy and all the things? Anyway, it's kind of a weird theory when I say it, but then when you hear other people talk about like actual evidence-based stuff, when they go into these conspiracy theories, you start thinking like, oh my gosh, is that real? And that's crazy. And that is so weird. And it's like stuff that you only see in the movies. But honestly, movies are based on like real things. Wes and I watched we watched something a couple days ago. It was a Sherlock Holmes episode. The one with Benedict Cumberbatch, which is like definitely the best Sherlock Holmes out there. But they went to this like military base, and this was like in England or something, but they went to this military base, and there's all of these like bioweapons that are being built, and like animal gene splicing and all this stuff. And they talk about all these like things that they're doing at this military base that's all scientifically based, like, so yeah, bioweapons and all that kind of stuff. And there's things like diseases and animals that they're doing stuff to their genes and manipulating them and all these things. And it's like, oh yeah, no, that stuff actually really does happen all around the world. And that's where things like COVID may have came from and stuff like that. And also ticks. But yeah, again, another, oh yeah. Oh, Chrissy,
we're not going down that rabbit hole. We need to transition to our actual topic.
Detoxing.
But I do want to say, I do find it very interesting that at the beginning of his second term in presidency, Donald Trump said, if you've ever heard a conspiracy theory, you should believe it to be true, because it probably is. And,
yep,
part of me wants to take that with a grain of salt because I don't want to believe it. But part of me is like, that's probably true. So if you would like to look into this conspiracy theory, you could probably Google search like church bells being turned into ammo. And you might...
No, actually you can't.
No?
That's the other thing. I mean, maybe you'll find some like people talking about it, but the problem is that Google is smart,
That's
right?
True.
I mean, quote unquote, they control all of the AI and all the stuff out there.
Conspiracies.
Yes, and so you have to use other search engines in order to find stuff. They actually, and now meaning they, in the podcast that I was listening to, it's on Gubba Homestead. I think it's just Gubba Homestead podcast. She talks about some of these crazy conspiracy theories and stuff. And the guy she was interviewing, who I'm forgetting his name, it's like Mark or something. He was saying that, yeah, if you Google some of these things, it's going to show you nothing. You have to but if you use other search engines, you'll start seeing more stuff. And it's just like Google.
So Bing it is.
Yeah. Anyway.
Microsoft Bing. Lord, I hate Bing. But anyways. Okay. We need to actually talk about detoxing now.
Yes.
So, detox. I think it would be appropriate to, first off, talk about the biblical basis for detox, because crazy enough, so we started this podcast talking about like our body's a temple, and we have been given resources to maximize the health and wellness of our bodies so that it can work best, so that we can glorify the Lord best with our bodies, right? Well, looking through scripture, in Leviticus 14, specifically verses 33 to 53, God actually gives the people of Israel a very specific regimen to go through if they have mold in their house, which tells me, like, the Lord obviously knows how dangerous toxins can be to our lives. And he thought it was so incredibly important that he spent 20 verses telling his people how to get rid of mold and what to do about it and how to purify themselves from it. And so it goes through an entire 5-step process. If you would like to read Leviticus 14, 33 to 53, go for it. It's really similarly structured to the rest of Leviticus of like, do this, then do this, and then do this, and then do this, with not really much explanation as to why. But essentially, the first step is to empty the house completely of all of the person's belongings And then the priest would go into the home to inspect the walls. And scripture specifically says if there's like a black, a green, a red, or a yellow, I think it says yellow, coloring on the walls, then that is considered mold. And so the priest is to then quarantine the house, which is step 2. So to shut up the house for 7 days, essentially creating a perfect, dark, damp, cool environment or warm environment for this mold to grow. And then at the end of that 7 days, go back in and inspect it. And if it has grown, then the contaminated stones are physically torn out of the home and taken outside of the city walls to an unclean place where they are scraped, and everything that's scraped off of them is left in that unclean place. And then new stones and plaster are applied in place of those old stones that were taken off. Then, if the mold is still there, which anyone who's dealt with any sort of mold remediation, you know it is a butthole to get rid of. Like, sorry, that was just the first thing that came to mind, a butthole. Mold is just so incredibly infuriating because it's like once it's there, it's so difficult to get rid of, because if you miss one spore, then it's back and it grows again. And so God knows this. And so he says, if the mold returns after the house is repaired, then the house is officially declared unclean and it needs to be completely torn down and demolished. And then the priest has to perform a ritual. The last step is purification. The priest then performs a ritual to essentially make atonement for the house. So, like, the make atonement is like to pay for the sins, essentially. And so it's like paying for the sins, not necessarily of the house, but I guess of the mold? I don't know. That part is confusing to me. But he still has to do a whole purification process of the space after the entire house has been demolished. So essentially, the Lord is saying, if there is anything impure in this space, like, to do everything in your power to demolish it. And I think that's a really good mindset to have when it comes to detox, and even like detoxing our minds, detoxing our thought processes, like getting rid of toxic thought processes and implementing thought processes from the Lord. Like, God says to write his scripture on the tablets of our hearts, like engrave it in our brains, because that is what's going to be healthy and to prevent us from having toxic thought processes. And so it is serious enough that he says to demolish the toxins. And so that is our goal today, is to teach you guys a little bit, just scratching the surface, because you could go real deep on this stuff, but just scratching the surface on how do we demolish the toxins in our life, particularly physical toxins, because we're talking about physical detox right now. But remember, this can also be applied mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because there's a lot of toxic and toxicity when it comes to those avenues of life also.
Yes. Yeah. So speaking of the physical toxins out there are a lot in our kind of modern society that we need to like detox from, like a lot of different burdens that we face physically. So in the environment, you have heavy metals and radiation. So like from EMFs, heavy metals can be from geoengineering, the chemtrails, which is no longer a quote-unquote conspiracy. It is something that happens, and there's a whole government website now dedicated to geoengineering. I think it's something like geoengineering.gov or something like that. I'll look up the website, but you can like look it up. It does happen. But they spray heavy metals into the sky in order to help global warming, which also is another whole conspiracy. But they're trying to block the UV rays from the Earth, like from like penetrating into the Earth's atmosphere. So it's supposed to like help global warming and stuff. But yes, so they do that. They spray these toxins into the sky, and then obviously you have the radiation from EMFs within our houses, but then also from like cell phone towers and all the things that use Bluetooth, anything like that. That all gives off a bit of radiation, and so our bodies are taking that in all the time. We do have an episode about EMF exposures and radiation and stuff like that, so you can go back and check that out. It's a handful of episodes ago. And then you have things obviously like mold, and then there's parasites, which parasites like heavy metals. So if you're full of heavy metals, they are in your body, and it's very likely that most of us have parasites, whether they are a heavy burden on our bodies or not. They likely are in us if you spend any time outside or if you eat basically any vegetable, any meat, any especially raw foods like sushis. They're in fish, they're in pork often. So parasites are something that we're exposed to and we likely have. And then you have the forever chemicals, PFAS, which those ones, they're called forever chemicals because they are extremely difficult to get out of your body. And so that you have that toxin and your body can like very slowly detox from it, but it's probably one of those ones that you can't do too much from. And then you have other synthetic ingredients in different, like a variety of different things, including from vaccines. Those also have heavy metals. And then you have other stuff from food, such like the dietary toxins. The big three of those are sugar, MSG, so that's monosodium glutamate, which is in a lot of foods that make them more delicious and addicting to us. And then there are seed oils, so anything like sunflower oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil. Even when they are organic, they usually are not good for our body. They are very inflammatory and disrupt and damage our mitochondrial function. So, yes, needless to say, there's lots of toxins that we are exposed to, and we wonder why we're all so ill all the time and can't stay healthy, even in just normal days. It's just like hard to stay healthy. So we're going to talk about some simple and budget-friendly detox things that we can be doing. And then we'll kind of go into some more targeted, deeper protocols and therapies that we can be doing when necessary. So I'll kick us off, and then Chrissy, if you want to talk about a few others. But one that I do every day that I can actually tell like really does help is doing warm lemon water. And I add a little bit of like mineral salt. So I do like either Redmond sea salt or Baja Gold salt in my water. And then, splash of lemon juice and cayenne pepper. Actually, that helps to it opens up your digestion pathways and hydrates your liver, and then just flushes the kidneys first thing in the morning. So it's really good to do it right when you wake up or basically before you eat anything. It just kind of, because it goes through your system really easily without having any food in there to block it. And it kind of just helps kick everything out. And obviously, going to the bathroom is one of our easiest detox pathways. It's literally how everything just gets out of your body. So that's my first one.
So funny. You mentioned that on a podcast, oh gosh, weeks ago before I got pregnant. So it must have been actually months ago. But I tried that and I didn't do the warm water aspect because I think before you didn't mention the warm aspect of it, but it was the lemon pepper, the salt, and the cayenne. And I have a habit of first thing in the morning, I drink a full glass of water. Now being pregnant, that's a little different because that's less possible first thing in the morning. But It still happens before I eat breakfast. And I tried it once with that cayenne pepper, and oh my goodness, spicy
Okay.
water first thing in the morning kind of smacked me in the face.
You just need a tiny dash of it because yes, a little bit goes a long way.
I think I put way too much cayenne pepper in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so spicy. Now I need a regular glass of water.
And actually, so Vani Hari does talk about how having a second glass of water afterwards does help the system even more. I typically just focus on the lemon water detox, the warm aspect of it. So it's good if it's room temperature to slightly warm. So not hot water, but you think about cold water or anything cold restricts things and makes them tighten up. And so having that warmer water loosens the interior of your whole system versus like when you have cold water, it makes your intestines and everything kind of like shrivel up. You think about like when you get cold or cold water touches you, or like if you pour icy cold water on something, it makes it harder. Or versus when you pour warmer water, it helps it melt and relax and stuff. So yeah, that's what the whole warm water thing is. It's softer on the system. It's not as shocking and it helps it to relax more and then obviously do its thing. So yes, and it just needs to be a very light dash of cayenne pepper. But if you
That was my
don't
mistake.
like,
I think I did like 5 dashes.
I just do like a half a shake kind of a thing. But it is still pretty spicy. And Malachi has tasted my water and he goes, "Spicy, mama." And he doesn't like it. And I call it Mama's spicy water because he wants to drink it still, even though he knows it's spicy. And I go, "It's Mama's spicy water."
Maybe he'll learn to like spicy food.
Oh, Wes is working on that. That is already underway. We give him lots of spicy things, plenty. It's kind of funny.
I love it. Okay. So another easy detox that is very cheap, if not completely free, is sweat. So, the skin is the largest organ in our body, and it is covered in sweat glands, literally head to toe. And so getting outside, moving your body, sweating specifically helps to push the toxins out naturally. And then after you're done sweating, wash it off and not letting it sit on your skin, because if it sits on your skin, it's just going to reabsorb into your skin. So, one place this is really helpful is like in a sauna, especially an infrared sauna. It gets you sweating, gets those pores open. But similarly to like an Epsom salt bath, it opens your pores, you get everything out, but then you got to rinse off because you don't want those pores to stay open and then reabsorb everything that they just purged. So, yeah, saunas are fantastic. Literally 15 minutes, get that sweat going and get those toxins out of your body. It's super helpful. I did saunas for a while, specifically after my workouts, just honestly it helps so much with muscle soreness. I did not get nearly as sore after working out when I did a sauna for 15 minutes versus when I didn't, because it helped to get rid of that lactic acid in my muscles, which is like a toxin to your muscles. It restricts your muscle movements, causes pain, things like that. So yeah, sweating is super, super helpful. Really, really good for you. And actually, when I was working with my naturopath and we did our detox, like our 2 weeks of detox, it was one of the requirements was to sweat for 30 minutes every single day. And that was kind of hard for me because it was wintertime. And I was like, how am I going to sweat? It's winter. It's cold. I don't sweat very easily, So I had to be creative. I didn't sweat every day, but should have. It probably would have detoxed me a little bit better if I did.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's one of those things that when you're doing some of those deeper detoxes, so if you're like doing like a parasite cleanse and things like that, it's important to really help facilitate that so that you're like, it doesn't just get clogged. Your body's like trying to get things out, but you need to physically help it out. So yeah, drinking extra water can really assist in that. But then going for a walk, a brisk walk, where you're like moving and getting sweat kind of moving, and you're starting to feel it drip and pool up in areas and stuff. And it doesn't like have to be intense sweating of like you're just like gross sweating, but like just that almost like damp feeling that you get when you're like, oh, I'm starting to sweat and my shirt feels moist, you know? It's like not super sweaty, but like sweaty.
Enough to want to put deodorant on and change your shirt.
Yes.
Maybe put your hair up in a ponytail.
And did you talk about some nutritional supports? Did your naturopath ever like talk about any of that?
I mean, yeah. Well, we did like a whole 6 weeks leading up to the detox of like getting rid of the toxins that we were adding. So with the program I did, we got rid of toxins. So we got rid of all added sugars, we got rid of caffeine, we got rid of gluten, we got rid of dairy, we got rid of red meat and tomatoes. That one was just because they're more difficult to digest. I don't think they're actually toxic. Obviously, we got rid of preservatives, artificial ingredients, things like that, things that were high, it had a high glycemic index. So pretty much any sort of grain we got rid of also, like rice, potatoes, things, potatoes aren't grains, but they have a high glycemic index. So got rid of all of that in order to prepare the body for the detox. So while we were going through the detox, my diet was pretty much only meat and vegetables. And that was it. There was no fruit, there was no sugar, there was no preservatives, like nothing toxic could really be added to my body because it wasn't even raw vegetables. It was like meat and cooked vegetables. And so, yeah, I think it was beneficial. Would I do it again? Maybe on a less aggressive scale.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if I had to do it, like if there was, I mean, Josh Axe actually talks about this, and I think they talk about it in their Biblio diet book too, they talk about like the whole idea of like eating like you have cancer because there's certain foods that help benefit cancer fighting stuff. I'm at a lack of good words.
Cells.
Yeah, and that just like are better at helping fight that process, but then there's also foods that hinder the process and not necessarily fuel it, but just make it harder to fight any illness. And that goes for even when you have like colds and stuff and like just the flu, there's different foods that are going to be more beneficial than others. And so
I don't know, have you ever had like a head cold and then had a glass of cold milk and just all of a sudden it just makes your cough that much worse? It makes the mucus that much worse. It makes it so you can't breathe. And, you know, it makes a lot of sense. If you go back to traditional Chinese medicine, they say to stay away from dairy products and like cold things when you have a head cold. And they say to focus on like warming foods, brothy kind of stuff, because those help to flush the system and get rid of the mucus and get rid of the toxins, versus the dairy products actually like increase mucus inside our bodies. Which makes sense for me a lot because one of my recent, not cravings, but food desires that I didn't have before is like straight milk right now. And I've had a more stuffy nose the past week or so since I've been having a glass or two of milk every single day.
Did we talk about like pregnancy cravings and like how it means that you have a lack of a certain nutrient when you crave certain different
part
things?
Of me believes that, but when I was really wanting sour gummy worms, I could not figure out
what it corresponded to
that I needed, because sour gummy worms are completely void of any sort of nutritional benefit.
Yeah, I wonder if it like would correspond with something that's sour in nature, like a certain fruit. You know how like raspberries are more sour, and so maybe
I have
something
been able
along
to
those
tolerate
lines.
Eating like lemon more so, like just sucking on a lemon is more tolerable to me right now than it was. Like I wasn't able to do that before being pregnant, but now I can. So
I mean, my neighbor friend, when she was pregnant, that was her main craving, was sour stuff. And so I'm sure there is some nutrient that your body is wanting. But my friend here in Michigan, she was a missionary in Africa, and she said that people in Africa, like when she was pregnant out there, they asked her if she had any cravings for things that weren't actually food. And I guess it's really common out there that like women have very different nutrient deficiencies than we have here, but very high nutrient deficiencies. And a lot of women will literally just eat rocks, like actual rocks.
Or like eating soil.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I've heard of all the other weird cravings and stuff, but never.
No, I actually was literally listening to a Josh Axe episode today on detoxing to prepare for this episode, and he mentioned how in Africa, like ancient African medicine, they have a certain type of clay or soil that they will consume in order to help with the detox process.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. Like bentonite clay is one of those ones that will help. So, okay, we can kind of talk about some of these other deeper.
That is more of a volcanic.
Yeah.
It's like clay made from volcanic ash.
Yeah.
There's no volcanoes in Africa.
Okay. Well, bentonite clay is one that I'm thinking of that I do know is a detox one.
I have used bentonite clay actually. When we
have too.
Went to Southeast Asia, I had a stomach ache for like the entire 2 weeks that we were there. It was horrible. Turns out it's because their major export in that region of the world is palm oil. And my body is not used to palm oil. It's practically a seed oil, just a little bit differently prepared over there than it is here. And my body vetoed that one real quick. And so I thought I was like sick and kept trying to take bentonite clay. It didn't actually work, but it does work if you have something like food poisoning or an actual bacteria or something that is causing the illness. It is very similar to taking like activated charcoal, and it will help to bind that toxin in your digestive system, and then you can get rid of it more easily. The nice thing about bentonite clay is also you can take it a little bit longer term than activated charcoal. Activated charcoal, you can only take very short term, like less than a week or so. Bentonite clay needs to be taken, well, can be taken for a longer term without causing any damage. But overall, shouldn't be taken every day as a precaution because it also binds minerals and things like that and can inhibit digestion.
Yes. So I did learn that like bentonite, the reason why it works is that it naturally carries a negative charge. So it binds to and draws out anything in your body that's positively charged. Toxic metals, like heavy metals, are typically, they have more of a positive charge. Same thing with viruses and same thing with bacteria. So it'll cling to those things. I actually don't know. I wonder if activated charcoal works exactly the same. We have both of them. And activated charcoal is actually what I typically use when I know that I've eaten something with MSG, because it helps to draw that out of my body. MSG for me is one of those ones that does for sure give me headaches. Like we had some meat that someone had gifted us for Christmas, and all of the meat, like all the sausages and even like their bacons, and then there was like one other thing, a big like pork roast. All of it had MSG in it, and I was shocked. And it's like one of those like hard things where I'm like, someone gifted us all this meat and I don't want it to like go to waste. And we did end up giving some of it away because at a certain point I was like, I can't keep eating this, and we might as well give it to someone who can eat it or will eat it. But yeah, every time we ate it, I would get these bad headaches. And so we made some like breakfast sausage with it. And that right after the meal, I did take some activated charcoal. I drank a huge glass of electrolytes, and then I made, I think, like a ginger tea after that, just to help with like digestion and stuff. And it definitely helped with the negative effects of the MSG on my body. And that's like a good way to help detox. Like even if you've eaten a lot of sugar lately, or if you've eaten a lot of seed oils, The other thing that I've learned is when we have like a day of like eating lots of sweets, or if we've been like we do this a lot of times, so like when we've been visiting with other people who don't have the same food guidelines that we do in our household. So there is seed oils, there is sugar, there is preservatives in all these foods. And of course, we're not going to be terrible guests, and we're going to be very gracious and eat whatever is prepared for us within reason. And then like the next day, we will always start our day with a very high protein and a high fat meal. So we do we just do eggs for breakfast. And so no other like carbs and other things that are harder to process. But then these, the healthy fats and proteins and stuff help to kind of bolster your system afterwards. So it's almost like a detox breakfast in a sense. And then obviously drinking lots of electrolytes and plenty of water and throughout the day is helpful. So getting good stuff and a lot of like a high level of liquid helps to continue to flush out all the bad things in there. Because I mean, we've talked about this. It's a toxin bucket kind of effect. If you have a big 5-gallon bucket, the hole at the top is large, and if you have a small spout on the bottom, it will drain eventually. Like all the toxins from your body will drain, but you need to slow down your intake so that way it doesn't overflow and then cause chronic illnesses, basically. Like your body is meant to detox. Like God has designed it to do that because God knew we would be exposed to lots of terrible things in our lifetimes. And he's designed it perfectly to work with these things, but we need to be good stewards on the front end of what we're putting into our bucket so that way it doesn't overflow. So like you don't have to like avoid things as much as possible, but you don't have to avoid them to the point where you're like, I'm never eating anything besides carrots I grew in my own backyard or something. So yeah, activated charcoal is great. Bentonite clay can also be like used topically to help. Especially if you have skin ailments and stuff, it can help with like a mineral detox kind of bath. You can put it on, and I know like you can make like pastes with it and put it on your skin. Especially, actually, I did hear that if you get like a tick bite, there's like some homeopathic remedies that you can do, but then also making like a bentonite clay paste can be helpful, like to put on that wound to help draw out any toxins from the bite. So
that's good to know.
Yep.
Did I ever tell you about the time I got bit by a tick?
I found a tick on my hair yesterday.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I didn't know you were bit by a tick.
Yeah, I was probably like 10, 11, 12, something like that. We were up in Massachusetts on vacation, and my sisters and I had spent all day in the backyard playing croquet. And at the end of the day, I looked down at my foot and I was like, huh, I didn't know I had a freckle there. And then I looked closer and I was like, that freckle has legs. It's okay.
So,
it wasn't super buried in there. It hadn't
okay.
been in there for very long, clearly, because I think like we were still able to pull it out in like all one piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put it in between 2 pieces of tape and put it in the trash because you can't flush it down the toilet. Or maybe we flushed it down the toilet or something. You have to put it in between 2 pieces of tape, though, so that the toxins from the tick don't go anywhere else.
The toxins come out of the tick?
Yeah, so sometimes, like if the tick has Lyme disease or something like that, when you pull it out, you could like squish the tick, which could transmit that disease into your skin. And so when you're pulling it out, you have to be really careful not to actually squish the tick. And then you put it in between 2 pieces of tape, because if you squish it between paper towel, then obviously that defeats the whole purpose of like getting it out of your skin. Because you just...
I was driving yesterday. We were driving home, and I was just, rubbing my hand through my hair, and I like felt something in my hair. So I'm like, I just pick it out. And I was going to just like throw it, but I happened to like look down at my fingers while I'm driving, and I realized it was a tick. And I literally scream and I just throw it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And literally driving. So I'm trying not to like drive off of the road and stuff. And I went back to try to find it, and I have not found it in my car. And
So
I
now you
probably
have
need
a
to
loose tick in your vehicle.
I know. It kind of makes me a little anxious. I haven't been in my car since then after that. So now
Send
I
Wes
need to
out. He'll
go.
find it.
Yeah, but go find the tiny tick in my car somewhere.
Must do a
All
deep
right.
detail.
Please. And he actually did clean the car really well, like a week or two ago. We hadn't cleaned it all winter, and our cars were filthy inside, especially because we had renovated our house and we were putting all these like materials in our car, like that we were throwing away. So big pieces of lumber and all this stuff. Our cars were so dusty and so gross, and there was like rocks and sand and dirt and everything. Anyway, he did actually do a super deep clean a couple weeks ago. So if I told him to be like, go clean it all again, he'd be like, no.
It's when you start with, do you love
him? Okay, so let's talk about let's kind of go over what do you want to talk about next? I also feel like we're coming up to our time, so I'm almost like we should maybe even like talk about parasites and things potentially in another episode, because I feel like there's a lot to that. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
It could go deep. It could not. So I don't know. I don't really know too much about parasites, so I feel like we could hit on it pretty quick.
Okay.
But that's just me.
So, yes. The reality is that likely all of us have parasites. They're little parasites. They like live on you. Yeah. Wait, what were you going to say?
I said they're bugs or worms that live in you.
Yes. And I mean, okay, my mom even made a joke yesterday. We saw her yesterday, and she made a joke about how grandma used to say, don't eat dirt, you'll get worms in your butt. And I totally remember grandma saying that. And so my mom was saying that to Mel. I do not remember that. Yes. She'd be like, don't eat the dirt or wash your hands. You have dirt on your hands. You can't eat, dinner until you wash your hands because they've got dirt and you'll get worms in your butt. So basically it's like it's funny to think about because there is actually a lot of truth to that.
I wonder what Josh Axe would say to that, because he literally like wrote a book called Eat Dirt and highly values like keeping organic dirt on your vegetables before like you just do a quick rinse and like the good bacteria from the dirt.
Yep.
I would love to hear his perspective on like parasites from soil.
The reality is that they're there, and you have a higher likelihood of having parasites if you garden. Like if you are just someone who's outside and you're in the soil, if you're getting dirty, if you hike, if you camp, all that kind of stuff. The thing is, I don't feel like parasites are something that we have to be like anxious, afraid about. I feel like we have to be vigilant about them, because if you have them, you want to get rid of them so that they don't become a problem. But you don't necessarily need to be like, don't do anything to ever get parasites. I do know some people who are like, I don't eat like pork, I don't eat sushi, I don't eat lunch meat, I don't eat, all these things that have a higher likelihood of parasites. But I'm like, all those things are yummy. So
I think it's one of the things, we deworm our animals, our cats and dogs have deworming medications frequently. And I think that's a good point. Like, we walk on the same ground outside that our dogs walk on, and like we sit outside and enjoy being outside, same as our animals. And so I think it's important to regularly be detoxing parasites just because we do have them. But it's not something that's like, if you don't do this, you're going to die, depending on the type of parasite, because some of them can be incredibly invasive and give you symptoms like even neurological symptoms and like fatigue and things like that. Some of them have no symptoms. Some of them, this is a really weird symptom of parasites that I learned a while ago, but like having an itchy anus is a symptom of having parasites. And they have said that, especially for children, if you put like a piece, so parasites are nocturnal. And so if you put a piece of tape over your anus overnight, then in the morning, you can peel the piece of tape off and see if there's any parasites on that frequently.
They come out at night
Yes.
to lay eggs. And so that is why you often get the added itching. Now, okay, here's a gross story. I experienced that, and I did a like parasite protocol with homeopathy, and I did that for a few days, and it went away. And it had been there, like that itching had been there for several days, probably like somewhere up to a week or so. And yeah, so I did that, and it was definitely, I did not do the take part, okay? Not into that part. That was not something I was going to do, because even if it was more one of those things that I'm like, I would rather just do the homeopathy thing, and if it works, great. And then it's like, okay, bye. But I'd rather not like see the evidence, if that makes sense, because it's, I don't know. I think that's the weirdest thing about parasite cleanses is like some people will go through, because a lot of parasite cleanses, the way that the parasites do come out is like through your poop. And so people will like go and
Like
look through to see if there's a parasite
that comes out.
Yeah. And I'm like,
Crazy.
I would rather just be like, hey, I feel better. That's good to know. Maybe I had a parasite, instead of being like looking for it and being like, that was in my body.
The one thing about parasite cleanses that I have also learned that you have to be careful is oftentimes they'll make you feel worse before you feel better. Because if you think about it, you have to kill the parasite before it comes out of your body. And by killing the parasite, it like releases everything. It's like all the toxins kind of release into your body. So then you have to get rid of the toxins and then get rid of the parasite. So it can be quite a process. And that's usually what happens with the tapeworm is it has to die and then detach from your intestinal lining and then come out.
So this is the point where I know my mother right now is listening to this episode and she's jumping up and down like, tell my story, tell my story. So my mom did a parasite cleanse, and so they went to Africa a few months back, and I told her, I was like, I think it would be really great if you did this after you went to Africa, because you're exposed to lots of different things out there. Cleanliness is different out there, and coming back, you just never know. And it's just like a good protocol. So she went to a natural food store and got a parasite cleanse that they had there. And she tried it, and she felt very tired and exhausted and took naps, which is not like my mother. She will tell you she's not a napper.
None of them. Our mom, neither of our moms or their two other sisters take naps.
They're like little energy bunnies, you know, they just keep going.
They don't stop.
I love naps. Yes. So she was just like very, very tired for the week or so that she was doing it. And she's like, I don't know. I just feel really tired. And so she said she never saw anything, at least not that I remember her saying. And overall, she's not really sure if it did anything or not. But again, for me, I would rather do it and have the assurance of like, okay, if there was anything in there, it's likely killed and gone. Versus actually seeing the evidence and being like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that was in me. Like it just feels so, like it feels invasive. Like this thing was in my body,
I'm
right?
so the other way around. If I'm like, oh, I want to see the evidence coming out. So then I have like something tactile and like a quantitative reason why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I can be like, yes, it's gone now. I can breathe a little bit. And that's so funny. I'm the other way around. I would much rather see it come out. But then I'd also be incredibly disgusted by it. But it would also be kind of cool. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't really... I still have yet to actually do any parasite cleanses. But from my understanding, and even kind of what my mom said, it's like there's... Most of the parasite cleanses that you'll find out there have a multi-step process to what you have to do. And so they'll come in multiple like vials usually. They can be liquid. I think they can also come in capsule form. There might be some that are like powdered. There's all sorts of different types. I know Earthly, we've talked about that brand. They have a parasite cleanse, and I think that's the one that I'm leaning towards.
doing. I do like my goal is to like do them once a year. Like I feel like that's a good like
I think that's a
just
good range. Yeah.
kind of like a spring cleaning of your body, right? It's like why not do it once a year just to get everything out. But part of the process is like a heavy metal detox. And so because again, the parasites like heavy metals, I guess is what it is. They also really like sugar. And so again, they are more active in the evenings. And so if you are craving sugar after dinner, slash like right before bed, it often is linked to parasites being like the parasites really want the sugar. And so they're making you crave sugar. And again, there was a point where I was like, I needed something sweet at the end of the day. And then I had that itchiness and stuff. And it was just like, I think I have little parasites. And it was really freaky.
Yeah.
But
I'm just thinking one other thing that really helps with parasites is enemas. And not the kind of fleet enema that you can buy from Walgreens. I'm talking like a colon cleanse kind of enema, like going to a colon cleanse type clinic and like doing the process with the machine that cleanses your colon and gives you like a really high quality enema that way has is also very helpful for getting out parasites because it's like literally
yes.
getting everything out.
And apparently timing it with the full moon cycle. This is where it's kind of like, what? But they like parasites are more active during like a full moon, like during that part of the lunar phase. And so you want to do the cleanse. I think it's a 2-week cleanse. And then, I mean, some people say do a 2-week cleanse, then take like a couple weeks off and then do another cycle of it. Because what happens is like, they're like parasites lay eggs. And so there's eggs, there's like different protocols for like killing the actual parasites. And then there's protocols for killing the eggs. And then not only that, but when they die off, like you were saying, they'll have like die off symptoms and you may feel worse during that time. But then, so that first phase of the parasite cleanse, they like things kind of die off, but then you actually have to help with the like preparing your body to actually detox and like opening up your detox pathways. And so yeah, and then actually like getting them off. And it is common that people will have like flu-like symptoms even when they're doing this. But yeah, I know like chlorella is one of those things that's really helpful. It's like really nutrient dense, but then also helps something with the parasites. I've also heard of like zeolite. Have you heard of zeolite? They're like, I think like a zeolite mineral or something like that. I forget what it is, but it's just like, these are the things that I'm like, are coming back to my head when I'm thinking about like parasite cleanses and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of different ones out there. If you like Google parasite cleanses, there's plenty of them being sold out there. I personally think I'm going to try the Earthly brand.
Let me know how it goes. That will probably be a post-pregnancy thing for me.
Yes, that is actually a really good thing to mention. They don't recommend doing parasite cleanses while you are pregnant.
Well, they don't recommend really many detox things in general while you're pregnant. I think like the generalized detox, like the cayenne pepper, the lemon water, things like that is probably more fine. Epsom salt baths are fine. But it's the more targeted stuff like these parasite cleanses or even bentonite clay or activated charcoal, I think are like better to stay away from when you're pregnant. Because, I mean, if you think about it, they're designed to kill things that are living off of your body. And a baby is living off of your body. And so you don't want to kill the baby. We keep the babies alive. We love the babies. So
yes,
that's all I got to say on that one.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good like intro to detoxing ideas. Again, there's so much more that could be said, and I'm sure we've I know we've only scratched the surface, and we are not experts on any of this. I mean, obviously neither of us have even done a parasite cleanse. My mother has. Thanks, Mom, for being our test subject for that one. Love you. But I will, I literally have that down as a goal in my planner for 2026 is to try a parasite cleanse.
Was one of my 2026 goals. And then I got pregnant.
And then you're like, plans changed. I have more important things to do now.
That's true. I'm gonna grow a baby instead. It's more fun.
It is so fun.
So much more fun.
I can't remember if we mentioned it, but Chrissy posted cute bump pics on our Facebook page. Or on our Facebook group, Crunchy Christian Mamas on a Budget. So if you are over there, hop into the Facebook group and go check it out. She's super cute. And she got a little teeny bump
group because in a week and a half, I'm going to be posting the gender of the baby because
oh my gosh.
And I am so excited.
Do you already know?
No.
Okay, you don't even know yet.
No, I haven't even done the blood test because I knew that I wouldn't be able to keep it in if I knew. But yeah, we think pretty much everybody's convinced it's a boy. I'm just hoping the anatomy scan will confirm.
I hope it's a little boy. Boys are so great. I didn't necessarily want a boy originally. I really wanted a little girl, but gosh, I am so thankful to have a little boy. They're so funny.
They're so fun. They have so much more energy too.
Yes.
Keeps you awake. I feel like a little girl, I'd be like falling asleep maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Toddlers are still toddlers. They will
still exhausting.
They'll keep you up.
Yes. All right. Well, we are nearing the end of our episode. So we hope you learned something from us today. Make sure you like and subscribe to our episode. That really helps us to get out there and for other people to hear about us, for us to be put on a For You page somewhere out in the world, so that we can grow and that you guys can continue to learn more things on how to steward your lives well with the resources that God has already given you. And so with that, hope you learned something today about detoxing your body. And remember that whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it all for the glory of God. We'll see you guys next time on Crunchy Stewardship. Thanks for listening.